That's
Greetings. I'm Daizon Dixon Diallo, and I'm the founder and president of Sister Love Incorporated. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Johannesburg in South Africa. And it is my privilege and my pleasure to spend the next few minutes having this great conversation with Dr. Tonia Poteat. Hey, Tonia.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so glad you're here. I really am.
Thank you.
Tell me, because I introduced you as Tonia Poteat,
Yeah.
but tell me where you are and what you do.
Okay. I'm an assistant professor. I'm located at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in Baltimore, Maryland. And I do research on HIV prevention and a little bit on HIV care.
Yes.
And see patients one day a week at the Bartlett Specialty ID Clinic.
Yes. What a lot of people don't know is that you are a Florida superstar, and that you are a superstar in what I would consider the HIV research world. And you hit your superstar status in my eyes when you really brought to the front the concerns, the questions, and the beauty of doing research with the transgender community. I remember that big lecture you gave at the HPTN, and you got a standing ovation, I believe, and so that was exciting. And so I want to talk a little bit about that in a moment.
Okay.
But let's start with here, CROI 2018.
Okay.
First of all, how many CROIs have you been to so far?
Not a lot, actually.
Yeah? Okay.
This is probably my third or fourth CROI.
All right.
Yeah.
And this year you presented on a big stage.
This year I did.
And we did
with
it
you.
together
Yes.
yesterday, and that was fun.
It
That
was
was
a
a
lot of
lot of fun. So talk about that panel, what it meant, how you, because you were the one who came and told your story. So
Yes.
how did that happen? and tell me about your impression of yesterday's panel.
I really enjoyed yesterday's panel. It was the Martin Delaney presentation that was part of the Early Investigators pre-conference. So it was a room full of people who were eager and new to HIV and learning, as well as a bunch of other people who were there, I think, to absorb some of that energy and to share what they knew. And the panel was Women in Science, and research is better if women are involved was the theme. And it was Monica Gandhi, who's a legend in HIV research and also mentoring new investigators, and myself and you.
Yes.
And I think it was a great choice to have the three of us talking about mentoring, life experiences, and activism. And it was interesting to tell my story in front of people who had known me for a while but didn't really know my story.
Right.
And I'd known you for a really long time, so I don't think I shared anything that you didn't already know.
Yeah, no, I think you did. I'm trying to remember because I was like, what? But, but it was such a lovely trajectory that you shared yesterday, and starting in community and moving through the activism space and then into the research space and figuring out how to bridge it all together. And that's what I hear, that's what I see, and that's what I feel come through your work. We have our history in Atlanta. You've worked domestically in the U.S. You've worked overseas, predominantly in Africa. And right now you're doing a lot more work with transgender communities. And it sounds like some around prevention, like PrEP, that kind of thing. So talk about some of that work and what got you more closely involved. What was that moment where you said, this is the study I want to work on. This is how I want to advance my own inquiry into HIV response.
Oh, that's a complicated kind of answer because it happened really organically, I think, which is, I think, how things happen best, right? So I went to get my PhD later in life. So I was in my 40s figuring out my dissertation subject. I had been working at the Community Health Center in Baltimore for a while, seeing all kinds of patients, including trans patients. And I had been volunteering with the local advocacy organization called the Transgender Response Team. So it was in community and amongst friends and thinking about what could I do that would really hold my interest and be a passion for me through the whole dissertating process. And felt like there wasn't a lot of information that was available, especially at that time. This was 2010 or so, on transgender communities, and that I could be of service in bringing some of that information to light and doing something that I cared about and was passionate about, and sort of grew from there.
So when you say you got your PhD later in life, I don't know what that means because I'm still going to get mine soon and I'm older than you. But the question I would have is, so were you considered a junior researcher during that time? because I think that's how you came into the presentation at HPTN at the HIV Prevention Trials Network. So Monica did this beautiful practical presentation yesterday. I mean, really on some of those very granular components of mentoring. Talk about your mentoring. Who was your mentor during all of your initial dissertation work on transgender community, or just in general when you were working on your PhD and doing your research in the postdoc status? Talk about your own mentoring relationships.
I feel like I have mentors for various aspects of my life. I think one of the mistakes people make is trying to find that one person who's going to mentor them. And I have peer mentors, and I have community mentors, and I have academic mentors. I feel like I've been very blessed with people in my life who have shared their wisdom with me and opened doors for me and provided some guidance for me. And very few of them have been sort of the structured, official mentor people. Those have been there. But in terms of people who know me well and can sort of sense what I'm trying to do with my life and connect with that and provide support for that, have been really, you've been one of my shining lights in my life.
Thank you.
And other people, I'm afraid to name anybody in case I leave anybody out.
I know what you mean. Yeah, no, but I get what you mean, because when you diversify that, it just makes your own development so much richer. So are you mentoring now? And what does that look like? Is it all researchers, or are there other folks that you mentor in different ways, and talk about that? And did anything that you learned from other folks mentoring you translate or transfer into your mentoring of others?
That is a great question. I call myself the reluctant mentor because I feel like I'm still sort of finding my own feet, but I also realize that I'll probably feel that way for the rest of my life. I do mentor people in academia, not a lot of people in my institution. I have mentees and advisees that sort of help shepherd through the process that I went through in terms of getting a PhD or some are master's students. I feel like I offer some mentorship to people in other institutions that I meet at places like this who are early in their career and are wondering, can I do really what I'm passionate about, or do I have to do this other thing? And it's like, do what you're passionate about, or you're gonna, some part of your soul is gonna die.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and then I think in the community, one of the things I'm really trying to figure out how to do now is, given all that we know about what the barriers are to HIV prevention really being structural things around access to employment and housing and things like that, trying to figure out how in my research program, in the process of building the research program, we can build into that infrastructure ways to provide opportunities for transgender women to get employment, to grow, to be doing their own research. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for doing that, one. And I learned also somewhere along the way that just best believe there are such things as secret mentees. You definitely have folks who you mentor that you don't even know. And I'm telling you, and they will come and tell you someday, but they are out there, so no. My last question, as we come to the close on this, is what's next? Because you are now almost a CROI veteran, like some of us are. Maybe you hit veteran when you hit your 5th CROI, I don't know. But so what are you working on that we can expect to see at CROI 2020?
Oh, well, I'm very excited. I think I was telling you about this a little bit earlier, that we got funding for a study in South Africa. So we're going to be collecting data in 3 cities, in Cape Town, East London, and Johannesburg.
Beautiful.
Working with trans-led organizations there to gather information around HIV prevention for trans women, like what kind of services do they need? What do they want? What are some of the barriers to getting those services? And then hopefully share that with the powers that be in South Africa to open some doors.
It's much needed.
Thank you.
Especially with our adolescent and young trans women. Oh, it's incredible need. So I'm excited about that. And I guess I do have one last question, is what are you most excited to learn from this prep that's this CROI that's going to take you into your research?
Well, I've been very excited to see, I don't want to take any credit for this, but there were questions that were raised in 2016 at the plenary that I did on transgender health that people are answering at this CROI in their posters. Not a ton.
Wow.
But you can search on the app for transgender related topics. I did that, and I found that people were answering questions around vulnerability to HIV for people who've had genital surgery. They were answering questions around hormone therapy and its risk for HIV and trans women. So I'm very, very excited to see those basic science questions being addressed here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw one question out because that's what we do here at CROI.
Okay.
And that just came up at a meeting I was at in South Africa just 2 weeks ago around, and this was a voice from Namibia around some of the trans issues there, and that there are very young people who plan to transition and go through the full transition, but because they are also seen as young men earlier in their lives, the VMMC initiative is very concerning to them because they think that it's not appropriate for early or childhood or infant medical male circumcision, because not all people born male identified are going to grow up male identified and will need that foreskin. We literally had a conversation on foreskins and why they should be protected for people who may need that later in life for their gender reassignment. What do you... I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't think that that's a question that's come into the clinical research field, especially bridging the work we're trying to do around prevention in sub-Saharan Africa with VMMC, or voluntary medical male circumcision, and at the same time trying to be as inclusive and conscientious about prevention for transgender folk.
I think that is a great question, and I just learned about it. There's an organization, a trans feminist organization based in East London that you're talking with, She, and they just published a newsletter, and one of the frontline articles was about that very issue and that very question, and I think it's fascinating. I have no answers,
right?
But I think it's something that has not been considered, and I'm really glad to see it coming to light. Yeah.
And just based on your own experience, your own leadership, I think that's exactly what CROI is about. While we're here to hear some answers, we're also here to generate more questions, and so thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my hug.
Hugs.